Hello, good morning if it's morning where you are, good afternoon if it's afternoon, and good evening if it's evening. I am Andrew Murphy, and welcome to another Tech Leaders Launchpad livestream. These are the events where I share the people that I learn from, the people that I get better by listening to, and that's no different today. Today I have Inga joining me. Welcome to the livestream, Inga.
Hello, everyone. How are you? It is pretty early morning here in Sydney, so thank you, everyone who's joining from the same time zone.
Yeah, it is early. I like to do these early so that we get, a little bit of learning in before work. It can be so, I think you get into work, you've got to check your email, you've got to get in, do your stand-ups, do your meetings, and, things just get away from you. I like to do these at 8 a.m. because it's close enough to the start of the day. You don't feel like you're guilty. You feel guilty for doing it, but you're not caught up by your work email yet.
For sure. It's hopefully after a first cup of coffee, but before the second
one. Speaking of coffee, I generally start these off with an icebreaker. The one that I normally like to use is tell me if there's a tech gadget or something that you use on a daily basis that is technology related, that isn't your phone or your computer. Because that's just, we just use those. It's just part of 21st century life. What's your favorite tech gadget you use on a daily basis?
I think you can guess just from my background, but it's probably my PlayStation, or maybe my Xbox, or maybe my Switch, but one of those devices, because I'm a gamer and it's a good way for me to relax.
Yeah, I love gaming. I recently, in fact, a couple of days ago, I installed a new cooler into my. I'm a PC gamer. Sorry, PC gamer here. I installed a new cooler, and I hadn't realized how loud my old one was. I was using one of these all-in-one coolers, and they just slowly over time, the bearings or something just kind of get worn down, and it was just making this grinding noise I hadn't realized it was making until I replaced the cooler. And suddenly my wife said, "Why is it so quiet? Is it turned on?"
I generally just blame dust and dog fur that I have everywhere because I have a dog.
Yeah, there you go. I have chickens. I can't really blame chicken feathers.
You can try.
I can try. I think if I put my gaming PC outside with the chickens, it will be a problem. My gadget is this thing here, which is an electronic cup warmer. I only bought it this week. Because I work in an office that's like a little annex to the rest of my house that we built in a back garden, and so I'm a 5-minute walk from the coffee machine. 5 minutes. Can you believe it? 5 minutes. Way too far. So I've got this, which is electric cup warmer. It is horrendously inefficient because I'm pretty sure it's just got a heating element directly across the 5 volts on the USB. But it works really well. So I feel a bit guilty. I have solar panels, so I feel a little bit less guilty. But it's a game changer. I hate, you're in that flow state, and then you go and try and take a drink of your cup of coffee and it's freezing cold, and you're like, ugh, what the hell is that? It's disgusting.
That's how you know you're in the flow state. You're drinking cold coffee, you are in the flow state. That's a perfect indicator.
Yeah, that's we should put that on a rubric somewhere. Like, number of cold coffees per day is an indicator of your engineering velocity.
Oh, we'll talk a lot more about that, but we can start there definitely.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's get into the topic then. If you're watching this, please don't forget this is a live stream. It's a live stream for a reason. Please feel free to ask questions. I've obviously got my list of questions to take Inga through and discuss with her. But part of the reason we do these live is if you've got a question you want to ask, we can tackle it here and now. We can talk about it. So please, if you're watching this on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitch, they've all got abilities to send messages, and please do so. My goal with these live streams is not to have you know something different at the end of it. That sounds a bit strange. I don't want you to know something different. I want you to do something different. And the difference between knowing something different and doing something different is knowing what it means for you and your circumstance and how it applies to what you're doing. And the best way for you to make that jump between knowing something different and doing something different is to ask a question. So please make sure you do that. We've got an expert with us today who's going to take us through some of this stuff. Speaking of which, Inga, this scaling up without slowing down. Obviously, you've got a whole heap of experience with this. Do you want to maybe give us a little bit of your background, who you are, for the folks at home who don't know you, and use that as a way to kind of segue into the topic we're talking about?
So yeah, I'm Inga. I have an accent. You get used to it. I made a conscious choice to keep my accent because apparently the Eastern European accent sounds authoritative, which is very helpful in my job.
Interesting.
So I switched to management. Oh my God, what was it? About maybe 7 years ago from the IC track. I was a technical lead. I loved solving technical problems, but at some point, the problems that I was solving got too big for one person or even for one team. And that's how I sort of moved to management, to just solve more difficult problems with more people. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about management and why I do so many like talks and conferences and presentations is because I have like this pet peeve with management, which is as engineers or designers or product, when we think about releasing a new feature, we sit down and we discuss user journeys. Here is what we're going to measure. Here is what we're going to look for. Here is what we want. We want users to start there. We want them to go there. Here is the action. We're going to check if they're taking this action. All of those reasonable metrics that we always have for features that we're delivering. But suddenly when we talk about engineering teams, we're just like, oh, we'll hire people and then they will do something. And then hopefully we will end up in some ideal state that we want to get. And for me, it's quite illogical. And as a software engineer, I really love structured logical approaches. So that's why I think I'm known as a metrics person. I'm a person that tends metricize everything they touch. And this includes engineering, this includes velocity, this includes teams, this includes startups, this includes scale-ups.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. I think metrics have got this really bad rap because they've been used badly, and I think, that there's a huge place where they add value, but a lot of engineers just have this visceral reaction when people start talking about metrics because they've been used to, hit engineers over the head with. So what's the difference in your mind between the ones that are effective and the ones that are not?
I think first, a very strange argument maybe, but it's honesty. Metrics should be open. Metrics should be a conversation. You shouldn't be hit at your 101 suddenly. By the way, you had 7 PRs last week, and you're like, what? But I had like 200 lines. Yeah, sorry, you shouldn't do that. But I think it is very important to agree on those metrics. Like metrics should not be pushed on anyone. They, as a lot of team decisions that we're making, they should be collaborative. We should decide what's important for us. Like if we want to move fast, let's measure how fast we're moving. What is the time frame between the feature inception and feature delivery? If we, like, an interesting aspect of this, if we want to grow a culture of like thoughtful PR reviews, let's measure how many PR reviews we're giving. Let's measure how helpful they are. Like, I think metrics are the things that you agree on, not the things that are pushed on you. And again, I think you can use them in a very healthy way as long as they're open and as long as people agree to them, as long as they're not forced on your team.
Yeah, and that's a really healthy way of looking at it. If they're being enforced top down, especially if they're being enforced from, people outside of engineering or the CTO who's accountable to those, like that, it can often be an indicator. But if it's how are we going to think about our productivity as engineering, and how are we going to kind of, agree what is good and what is bad, and obviously with the leader guiding that conversation and directing it. But yeah, that collaborative approach I think is important. So that's obviously one of the things we need to think about as we scale, is what does scale actually mean? Like, let's nail that before we get too deep into the weeds. In your mind, when we're discussing this topic, we're talking about scaling up, but scaling up is a little bit of a nebulous term, because scaling up could mean revenue, it could mean headcount, it could mean number of teams, it could mean engineers, it could mean architecture of the system, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff. It is the way we think about scaling up and the impact it makes on the organization is going to be different between what thing we're scaling up. Like which things kind of had the biggest impact on the business, do you think?
I think when we talk about scaling, instead of having the discussion about this amorphous thing the company is scaling, we need to actually transform it into why. What is the actual reason behind us scaling? Are we scaling our systems because currently we have too many customers and our system just cannot support them? Are we scaling an engineering team because there's too much work and we definitely have features that can be developed within this potentially new team? Are we scaling our sales? Are we just selling more, and as a result we have to build more? Or there is always there should be, not there is always, I'll take it back, but there should be a goal. Like, you don't scale for the sake of scale. And it would be a very strange approach to say, we're going to scale to a headcount. And I've seen situations when this is the conversation, and for me it is a very strange conversation. Like, we are not shepherds. It's not about the size of the herd, I guess. It is about the skills and what people within this organization can do. So there should be a goal for scale, and it doesn't mean that it has to be the same goal for everyone. We may want to scale our engineering systems because blah. We may want to scale our tech company or scale our teams because blah. But there should be a goal. Like, scale is when you add more stuff to achieve something specific, right? If we simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a really good kind of. Is there a better phrase than anti-analogy? The shepherd example you use, because when you said that, my brain went to, a shepherd would buy more sheep because more sheep equates very directly to increased revenue. When you're a shepherd, the number of things you are shepherding very directly relates to your revenue. And you can make some arguments around scale, and increased animals means increased disease, but there's a counter to that, which is increased animal also probably means increased efficiencies. But pretty much there's a almost linear relationship between the number of sheep a shepherd has and the revenue that they generate from those sheep. But that is just not the case in a software company at all. I've seen scenarios. I worked at a Australian scale up that went from 50 headcount to 300 headcount in 6 months. And surprise, surprise, at the end of those 6 months, the amount of features. Let me rephrase that. The amount of value delivered to customers actually went down at the end of those 6 months. And it was because it's not a simple scaling law. Like, things get complicated when you add more humans into this process. So what are some of those things that go wrong when you're scaling a team?
Look, I think it is probably the main problem, right? On one hand, you want to deliver more value, and you assume that you need more people to deliver more value, which is a reasonable assumption to some extent, right? But then there are other parts of this equation, which is onboarding, knowledge, skills, processes. Like, if you add 30 people to your team, and now your team is 50 from 20, and your original process was just go and talk to this person. Now everyone is just constantly talking to everyone, and when it's 50 people, first they need to figure out who to talk to, then find time from this person, and this person will take this time away from their actual current problem that they're working on to talk to this person, and suddenly there's so many conversations, and suddenly people spend time in endless conversations, and while they're spending time in one conversation, the other product move forward, and they now lack context in this aspect, and they go and talk to another person. So clearly you need processes for scale, and you need processes that scale. That's another very interesting conversation to have. But what is magical man month? Not a thing.
Yeah.
I really believe in intent in scale. And your intent in scale, which is this goal that you're scaling for, heavily depends on where you are, heavily depends on the product, heavily depends on your roadmap. Like I really, really believe that if you just scale without looking at what's coming, you're scaling for no reason. This is absolutely amazing that we hired 4 front-end engineers. Sadly, we are actually building completely backend system from next month. So, oh my God, are we going to now ask all of them to become backend engineers?
And that can be challenging because you might be building something front end heavy for the next 3 to 6 months, and you've got your engineers saying, I'm building things out of my skill set. You've got the product managers going, why are these engineers taking so long to build this front end feature? And you've got to kind of be sitting there and going, I know, but I'm not optimizing for the next 3 to 6 months. I'm optimizing for months 6 through 12. But it's still the tough conversations.
It is. And another thing that I'm very passionate about is tough conversations, because I think it is very important to have those honest conversations. It is very important to have them even when you're hiring. Right now, we need this front-end skill, but actually everyone within the company is a full stack. So at some point, there will be expectation for you to pick up backend. And if you're honest about this, the person who doesn't want to learn backend and just thinks it's for boring people will not come on board.
Which is a good thing.
Win. You both win.
It's a good thing, losing a smart, talented individual who isn't a right fit for your team is often a good thing. Like, sometimes we're in situations where we can make roles for those types of people, but those situations tend to be when we're not going through hyper growth, when we've got a more stable company, or we're at either end of the scaling situation. We're either, startup when we can be, more flexible with what we're doing, or we're kind of, scaled already and we can kind of afford a little bit of the overhead for that risk and potential reward of having somebody who maybe isn't the right fit. But yeah, when you're in that scale point, everything needs to be optimized as much as you can.
You need to be intentional about everything you're doing, especially if we talk about like startups space, where there's always a lot of movement, a lot of change, a lot of pivots. That's why I quite often get asked when I interview people, what is the skill that you're looking for? Like, how many people do you want to hire? What's the headcount? And I really don't like this question because I'm like, I don't have a headcount in mind. What I call them, quote me if you want, people-shaped holes in my organization.
Yeah.
And at different stages of the organization, those are differently shaped holes. But for any scale-up, any startup, it is very important to identify those exact holes and say, yes, right now we need a necessary person. Because we are at this stage of scaling up when we definitely need someone to be there and be responsible for the reliability. Or we are at the time when we need a security person because this responsibility was shared between the teams, and a couple of team members were doing that. But now we are doing more audits. We are going through more processes with enterprise customers, we need to hire the security person. So this is security shaped hole. And again, hopefully, that you are going to have more enterprises in your pipeline, or the reliability will become more and more important. So you can make those choices and you can make those hires and you can have those people on board that actually satisfy what you need. And it is not always about hard skills. Like quite often you need soft skills. You need a senior engineer who can talk to enterprise customers. It is a skill talking to enterprise customers. Or you need to have an engineer who is actually very good mentoring juniors, because you have several juniors and they're running around screaming, doing crazy stuff. So someone needs to help them and teach them the ways. So it is soft skills, it is hard skills, it is personalities. You need different personalities in your team. Like if your team is full of ready to roll, jump, very energetic people, oh my God, you really need a senior person who will say, now let's look at the architecture. Does it actually fit? So it is to some extent art, but it is also driven by the actual need.
Yeah. I often, when I talk to people about this topic, one of the things I discuss, and I'm going to give you my opinion on this, and if you disagree with me, I know where hundreds of people are going to watch this, but please disagree with me. One of the things I often talk about is when you're scaling, a common mistake you make is you've been in this place where you've had a scrappy 5-10 person startup, and you're getting to, or maybe a 10 to 20 person startup, and you're kind of you're going to get to a 200-300 person company within a year or two. And so what you do is you hire a bunch of people from Google and Amazon and Microsoft with the idea and the thought process that by bringing these people into your 100-person company, you're going to pull the mentality of those startup people to where it should be. And hopefully the people from the Google and Microsoft will be pulled from their end of the spectrum to the 200 to the 100, 200 way of doing things. But what often happens is there's just this massive culture clash, and both of them just don't move, because they're reacting so viscerally and so strongly to the complete polar opposite way of working that there isn't that meeting of mind in the middle. And I see this regularly when I'm talking to scale-ups. Is that something you've observed? Do you kind of agree or disagree of that way of doing things?
Look, a couple of things. First thing, long time ago when I started in management, and there was a bit of reshuffling in the company, and we had this draft of how the teams need to look like. And in one draft, there were like 3 people from one team and 3 people from another team. And the more experienced manager came up to me, and he was like, do not do this. Like, if you have equal amount of people with different cultures, all they will do will fight about the culture. And because there's equal amount of them, no culture will win.
Yeah.
So making cultural changes is very hard. And I think if you hire people to change the culture and you don't tell them that you're hiring them to change the culture, it is a very bad setup. Because using your example, if you're a startup, scrappy startup with like 20 people, you already have a culture. Everyone has a culture. We can talk about the culture that we have, or we can pretend that we don't have a culture, but we do. Everyone has a culture. Every team has things they value, things they don't value, things that they prefer to build, things they prefer not to build, ways they prefer to build those things, the behaviors that they value, the behaviors that they don't allow. Everyone has a culture. And when you bring people with different culture trying to influence the culture that you have, the right question is, what are the changes that you want to make? Are you empowering those people to make those changes? Are there changes you actually need? This is the deepest question that you can have. Because yes, you bring in people from Google who used to work like in let's be honest, not the fastest paced environment. They used to spending time on things that they work on. They're used to like proper design reviews. They're used to architectural solutions. They're used to a lot of planning. They're used to foresight. Are you going to offer all of this to them in your startup? Do you need all of this at this stage of your startup? You have 7 people, engineering team. Do you need design reviews? Maybe the answer is yes. I'm not saying the answer is no, but that's what you're bringing.
Yeah, but you know, the design review can be a 15, 30-minute Zoom call where you all just hop on a call and have a discussion rather than, you know, a 20-page brief with pre-reviews, etc., etc.
That's a good question. What are they bringing? What are they used to? What type of culture they're going to protect? For me, it's a very interesting problem because I usually do like hiring manager interviews, which is the second interview in the process, right? And I deeply believe that my main goal for this interview is to see if I'm hiring someone who will be good for my team. Because there will be a technical round, there will be a co-founder round, there will be more conversations. I will know how good they're technically, I will know how good they're at comms, I will know a lot more about them after the next round. But at this exact moment when I talk to them, the most important thing for me is just not to hire a jerk.
And let's be honest, in engineering, there were plenty of jerks out there.
Look, sometimes you need a jerk on your team. Maybe I never been in the situation when I needed one, but maybe there are situations when you do. But this is again about the culture, because because we just talked about the culture you want to change, but quite often you have a culture that you want to preserve.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Oh, I was going to say, like, let's talk about that then, because that's often a, you know, when I speak to founders about scaling their teams, they often say, I don't want to change anything about the way we work now. You know, the culture we have is the culture I want to have, you know, in 5 years' time. And I often have to say to them, look, you cannot, it is impossible to have exactly the same culture when you're a 200-person company as when you're a 20-person company. It doesn't work. Like there's scaling laws, there's, you know, exponential growth of communication channels that happen when you go through that scale. So you have to, to use your words, be more intentional about the culture you want to keep and the culture that you let go. In your experience, what are some of those kind of, I guess, disappointing cultural things that we have to let go of as we scale? Like, what are the things that, you know, we kind of wish we could keep, but really just don't work at scale?
I would look at this a bit differently. I look at this because people love the word culture. They just throw it around. Here is our culture. Here's our culture. Describe to me what your culture is. And that's when the interesting part of the conversation starts, because culture is behaviors, right? What we do and how we do this. And for you to understand what you want to keep, is the requirement for this is to understand exactly what you're keeping. Because like, oh, we move fast, we want to keep it. What does it mean, move fast? How do you know you're moving fast? What are the actual behaviors of people that allow you to move fast? Because we have a lot of abstract thoughts, abstract descriptions around culture. Everyone is helping each other. What does it mean? Do they review each other's PR? Do they look at the technical designs? Do they pair? Take the abstract of the culture and try your best to transform it into behaviors. Because behaviors you can keep. Not all of them, but a lot of them you can keep. And you can start measuring them and you can get into metrics, which is what I love. But I think it is okay to let go of some of the behaviors that worked for you before. And it is another very difficult and very interesting conversation around. There were things that worked well for us at this stage of the company, And those things will not work well for us at the next stage of the company. Even more so, and the sadder conversation is there were people who were good for us at this stage of the company. They will not be good for us at the next stage of the company.
Yeah. Like that scrappy mindset of build at all costs works really, really well at startup, but not necessarily when you're getting into enterprise customers where if you break something and your customer is Joe Blogs down the street who can give the founder a phone call and go, hey, what's up, this broke, and founder can run into you and go, oh no, that thing we just deployed broke, fix it, and then you fix it. Like, that's fine at a startup. That doesn't work when your customers are enterprise, because that escalation internally can often take days.
It's not just that. Like, let's talk about behaviors, right? You have a team of 5, you are a CTO, you can jump in, you see all the PRs, you know exactly what's happening in your code base. You have an engineering team of 300 people, you don't know anymore.
No.
If you make a conscious effort, you will know like the top architectural patterns, you'll know the systems, you maybe read all of your run books for on-call documentation, you know what can go wrong, what we're monitoring, but you're much further from the code now. And that's a behavior that you have to let go as you grow. That's another example. There are behaviors that will not suit you anymore, and it is fine. Like fighting against the flow, fighting against, oh, no, I have 300 engineers, but I can definitely look at all the PRs. You're a bottleneck now.
Yeah, it's not possible, We've touched on metrics a couple of times, and I can see your excitement every time we talk about it. So let's talk about that a little bit more in depth. What do you think are the important things to measure, and why, as a company, is kind of going through this scaling journey?
I think a couple of things. First, what's important to measure depends on where you're at, depends on what you value, and depends on what sort of culture you want to grow. Because metrics are very powerful because they help you to organize people around them. And also, people will gain your metrics at some point. That's fine. You accept this. That's okay. We can work with that. Again, getting back to my example of the user journey, what do you want? What do you want your engineers to do? How do you want them to behave? What value do you want to deliver to customers? How fast? With what level of quality? Because there are it is computer science, but it's not that hard. We all know some metrics. Like during our careers, we learned like cycle time, lead time, incident management, time to resolve, time to acknowledge, etc., etc. Bug triage time. There are already good metrics. You decide what you're going to pay attention to, and you decide it as a team. Like, for example, let's take bug triage. We probably have some deliverables around, like we look at this bug within a day, we will fix this bug within 2 weeks. This is your metric. How many bugs came in? How many bugs were triaged within the time frame that you set up? How many bugs were fixed within the time that you set up? And the interesting thing is that you don't use metrics immediately. To make good data-driven, metrics-driven decisions, you need to have them over time. Like since I started at Relevance, I now have 7 months of data. I have 7 months of data around this was our cycle time, lead time, this was our bug triage time. 6 months ago, this is what is now. Did it change? How did it change? What is the theory around why it changed, if it changed? Because it's not just about team performance, it's also about making decisions. If we had 10 bugs a week 6 months ago, and now we have 30 bugs a week, a reasonable assumption would be that it will take us more time to fix all of those bugs, right? And you can see, you can actually look at your roadmap and see, we released this feature, we started having more bugs. What did we do? So when you have this data, you can metricize it, and then you can start making decisions or assumptions based on it. But you also can have a conversation with the team. Like my metrics documents, they're shared with all the engineers at Relevance. They can go and look at this and see, this is how we moved. This is what changed. Should we have a conversation about what changed? That's why, like, the very important thing for me is metrics should be transparent.
Yeah.
You don't come to you one-on-one with your manager and here, actually, I looked at these hidden metrics that you didn't know I was measuring. And this is the amazing story that they're telling me. And you're like, I never knew that we were measuring this. And especially if I'm new at the company, I do things in a different way.
Yeah.
Or we started this project with this new team and we just, bad idea, but we just merge everything immediately the moment it comes up. There are no PR reviews. Not a good idea again, but it doesn't mean that we're moving slower because we have one PR review while other teams have 35. We're just merging everything.
Yeah.
It is a conversation. So you have your data, use it to have a conversation. Try to avoid using it to like punish people or reward people, because it's not about that. Because when you have this conversation, how do we scale and move fast? The right question is, what is fast?
Yeah.
And what is fast is not, oh, we just deliver faster. What does it mean, deliver faster? What is a faster delivery? How the faster delivery looks like in numbers, how it looks in tickets, how it looks in incidents, how it looks in bugs, how it looks in PRs, how it looks in PR reviews, how it looks in design reviews. All of those things trickle down, and you look at all of them, and now you know what fast means to you.
And that understanding of why fast is important, because the reasons and the decisions you might make at a bootstrapped 100-person scale up versus a venture funded 300-person scale up are going to be radically different, because what fast means to them and what value means to them, and the impact means to them will be completely different, not least because of the number of people, but also largely because of bootstrapped versus venture funded. They care about radically different things.
That's what you value. That's exactly what you value. Like, if maybe 30 bugs is okay, because you're a startup and you have self-serve customers. Yes, they will cry a bit and customer success will not be super happy, but this is a level of pain we can live with. Having 30 bugs with enterprises that are screaming that this is unacceptable, and you probably have some sort of legal document with them around availability of your services, it is very different. That's why it is not a conversation in a vacuum about, let's measure this. Oh no, let's measure this. This is what scale is. This is the headcount. It is about you. It is about your product. It is about your company. It is about your culture. And getting back to the example that you gave, bringing people with different culture from a different company, it can work. As long as you're very intentional and you know exactly what you want, and you know that they have the exact culture you want, then you can make cultural change. You actually don't have to bring people for that. You can make cultural change within. It is hard, but it is doable. But it is not random. If you bring people from Google to have Google culture in 20 people startup, that's a very interesting idea. Let's go with that.
Yeah. I think there's all of these great starting points for engineering metrics, things like DORA and space, and all of those great ones out there. But I think the thing they're often missing is that thing we just discussed, which is like, why is this important? How frequently do deployments fail is one of the DORA metrics. And that example we talked about with startup versus enterprise, like as in customers, so small customers versus large customers, that metric has a radically different impact on the experience of the customers and the impact of the business. How long it takes to restore service from failure, like, again, radically different if your customers are enterprise versus individuals. So like, although things like DORA and space, if you have no idea at all what to measure, they're an excellent starting point. You still have got to ask that why question. You still have to connect it to that larger level kind of, what are we here to achieve as a business point of view, to know which of those are the most important and which of those to focus on.
But it's also about, again, it is about the people that you have now. This conversation about what we want to measure, it's actually eye-opening conversation quite often. And I think you should have it within your team, because this tells you what your team values. This tells you what's important for them. And if you're a leader, it may not be things that are important to you, which is very, very interesting and deserves a separate conversation. Like, again, PR reviews or PRs. What do we measure? Do we measure how many PRs people sent? This is one culture. This is what we value. Or we measure PR reviews, which is another culture, another value. You can measure both, but which one of those do you celebrate?
Yeah.
Which one of those is more important to you? This is about culture.
This is making me think that this is something we should talk more about in interviews, because back to your point of sometimes the great person is not the right hire. This is another example of that. Like, maybe we should be talking more in interviews about the way we measure the success of the engineering team, so that people who don't care about those same things, kind of, like you were saying, self-select out of the process.
This is about having an honest conversation about what you need. You need to know what you need for that. Let's be very honest. That's where you start. You need to know what you're looking for. And then you can probe, you can ask questions. I always ask in my interviews, like, in 2 years, after 2 years with us, what will make you feel fulfilled? It tells me what the person values. It tells me who do they want to be when they grow up. It tells me the things that they want to build and how they want to build them. It tells me what's important for them. How do I motivate them? All of those things. But it also tells me, like, if they want to be an expert that everyone goes for advice, amazing. In 100 people team, I am not sure it's a good and healthy thing for everyone to be for someone to be a keeper of the knowledge that everyone has. And that's why I say to some extent it is an art. Because again, your goal as a manager, as a leader, when you talk to a person, to see, are they going to add to your culture? Are they going to detract from your culture?
Yeah. Because again, this idea of culture fit is a little bit of a misnomer. It's about how can we build on the culture we've got rather than just everybody fitting the mold. So we're 15 minutes to the end. I say this literally every live stream. This hour just disappears away from me. Let's touch on one of the things which I think is important to make intentional decisions around, which is how many people we hire and where we hire them. So I guess the risks of over and under hiring, and kind of the indications that you've made the wrong calls. So like, what's a good indication or a rubric that the decisions you intentionally made were wrong in that space? So I've either hired too many people or not hired enough.
Look, I think hired too many, not hired enough. I don't believe in not hired enough.
Okay.
I believe in not onboarded enough, which is very different thing.
Fair.
Again, I struggle with this idea of hunting for the headcount. You can hunt for skills, You can hunt for your people-shaped holes, which means you have in mind what this person is going to do when they come on board. What exactly is the need of the business that they're filling? And you need to be honest about this need. Like, I am very passionate about like my 30 days, 90 days, 120 days plans for a person. Not because I believe that there is like a set of rules that they have to follow, but because I think it gives them direction, it gives you the direction, and it gives you the point of alignment. If we are very actively hiring, a very interesting thing that I need, very interesting skill that I need is the interviewing skill. Every engineer in my team should be able to host technical challenge interview for hiring, because we're hiring a lot. And if there are like 2 people who can do those interviews, they are not doing any other job, let's be honest. So this is a skill. This is a soft skill. But I expect a person that I hire to be able to host the interview that they went through in like 90 days. What do I need to give them for that? They need to shadow other interviews. They need to have all the documentation around our interview process. This is just one of the examples, right? Maybe I want them to pick up the security side of things. I want them to be fully onboarded by this point and be able to answer questions from customers by this point. I want them to be able to talk to a person who is doing a pen test at this point. You write it down. You talk to a person about this. You shuffle it around. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It shouldn't be set in stone, because we're in startup. The situation changes. Things change, but it gives a person direction and it gives you alignment points. If your expectation change, that's fine. You talk to them, you change the expectations. The bad thing is when your expectation change and you did not tell person that your expectation changed. That's a very bad place to be. But again, it's when you have your basic metrics around, this is how we usually move. This is the speed that we usually move with. This is the usual amount of bugs. It hurts me to say this, but this is the usual amount of bugs. This is the usual amount of production incidents. We're hiring more people. Are we moving with the same speed? Did we slow down? What slowed down? Let's talk about this. Let's figure out why. Maybe it slowed down and we're okay with that.
Yeah,
maybe
because there could be a transitional period of you've got people on board, you're going to be less efficient for a certain period of time while everybody works it out. Like it's not going to be the constant, linear growth.
And it is okay, but again, unless you don't know, like because I really don't like feeling conversations, which I feel like we're moving slower. What can I do for your feelings?
Yeah.
Are we? And this is how you know if you're like overhired. You slow down, you talk to your engineers, and you can see that they're constantly onboarding, they're constantly answering questions because you don't have documentation. Because your engineers are not using AI tools for faster onboarding. Because you don't have like AI agents with all of your documentations that the onboarding person can talk to and ask questions. If onboarding is your problem, solve this problem.
Yeah.
And when you have this data, you can, again, the data in itself has no value. But when you can overlap it with the decisions that you made, that's where magic happened. A while ago, I had 2 years of data around subjective metrics for my team. Subjective metrics were like, we literally voted, like I'm in green in terms of my deliverables. Like I feel good. It was feeling like I feel good about my deliverables. I feel good about the amount of meetings I had. Engineers and meetings have to have these metrics. And I learned something. And when I had 2 years of data, I can overlap it with like, my engineers feel better when, my engineers feel worse when. It is very subjective. It is a fun voting process to do at the retro. But then you can make informed decisions and you can have those conversations. There are things that happen that usually make us feel worse. It is temporary. It will end. let's continue pushing through this.
It makes me think whether we should do something similar with like the CEO's feelings. And the reason why I say that is there's often this common pattern that happens, which is, you know, the team scales and the CEO feels like the engineering velocity has slowed down, feels like the value to customers has stopped being delivered. And I wonder if a similar exercise could be useful in, you know, in respectfully challenging those feelings of like, you know, why, like, what is it? What are they seeing and observing, and how does that reflect itself in the engineering metrics that you're measuring? And if you can't find a correlation, you know, there might be something missing from your metrics.
Yeah, and this, again, it is fine. Gather the data. Yeah. Use your data. You can gather data about feelings.
Yeah.
The main thing is always to get down to factual information, because there are things that are happening. Huge customers come on board. Company has a hackathon. There was a week with like production incident every week. There was a week when we released an amazing feature and it introduced no bugs. And this is like, if suddenly you had a hackathon, but your team feels very bad, you need to really dig into this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And data allows you to do this. Like, there is a thing of like weaponizing the data, which happens in engineering. We know about this. It's hard to avoid this. You should avoid this, because data is an indicator. It is for you to use as you see fit. But for you to use it, you need to know what you want. Why do you want it? What do you want to encourage? What do you want to discourage, which is also very important. And that's how you look at it. Those are your metrics. And again, it is a conversation with your team. You don't do this on your own quietly in the corner, because there is no value in that. If people don't know what you value, if people don't know how you measure, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is the secret evil planning?
I call it the difference between data and information. Like, data is the raw metrics. Information is the things that we've contextualized because of that data, that we've added in a bunch of other stuff around it to turn that raw data into something meaningful that we can, you know, make decisions based off. The data by itself is often not meaningful. Yeah. It needs that contextualization. Wow. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. We are at 8:55 Melbourne, Sydney time. So let's start wrapping up. Thank you, Inga. This has been an amazing conversation. As always, I have my list of 20 questions, and we've got through about 3 of them, which is good. It's a good thing in my mind. Like, you know, my metrics around this are about if people have enjoyed the conversation, not how many questions have I got through. So like, I am perfectly happy with that as an outcome. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next on Tech Leaders Launchpad. So let me just get this up. I'm using a different live stream platform to what I normally use, so it's taking me a little bit. Here we go. So next up, I have a come on, short stream. There we go. Next up, I've got a live stream with Rendell. For those of you who don't know, Rendell is not as well known in the kind of APAC region as they are known in the kind of European region. But Rendell has got a huge amount of experience as an architect, and has just kind of taken on their first role as a startup CTO. And we're going to talk about what a startup CTO actually does, and you know, the surprise that they had going into this, and how their role has changed from, you know, being a kind of a core contributor to a startup CTO of a very small, much smaller than your company, Inga. and what their role looks like. So that's going to be in about a month's time, so 27th of November. I'll share the link in all the socials for you to register for that. You might also, for the long-time watchers, you might have noticed something different in this slide, which is that the company name in the top left is not Tech Leaders Launchpad. So we are going to be going through a little bit of a rebrand and a little bit of a change, which is we are transitioning from the company Tech Leaders Launchpad to our new branding, our new company name, Debugging Leadership. So Debugging Leadership, for those of you who have followed me for about a decade, was what I originally called the stuff that I was doing 10 years ago. And it's kind of got to the point now where I miss the simplicity of that company name. I really miss the phrase debugging leadership because it really speaks to the core of everything that I try and do, which is like, let's talk about this leadership thing and let's debug it. Let's find the ways it works and the ways it doesn't. And that goes along with a product and a platform that I'm building. So Tech Leaders Launchpad right now is online video learning. And I kind of, a lot of the feedback that I've been getting from people is that the value that they see in a lot of learning is not necessarily just the videos that they watch, it's the conversations and the discussions that happen around that. And so I wanted to start building a software platform which is geared towards helping companies run communities of practice around technology leadership. So think about it as a Kanban board for your communities of practice or your individual learning, where you add cards onto the backlog, and those cards are topics of learning, and they can be either ones from our suite of learning, or they can be your own stuff from your own backlog of learning materials, videos you've seen on the internet, compliance training, yuck, that you have to do, all of that kind of stuff. If you want to know more about that, scan the QR code there, or I'll post it in all the socials. But this is the new thing that I'll be doing, and the company is going to get repositioned and rebranded in the next few weeks. And I am really excited for this. This is going to be so much fun. I love a good rebrand. It's an opportunity to ask all of those why questions, like why are we doing this? What's the value behind the business? What's the value behind the stuff that we're helping? Who are we helping, and how are we helping them? I love all of those discussions, and a repositioning and a rebranding is a great opportunity to do that. Inga, anywhere you want to send the folks at home?
Look, please come and use the Relevance platform. You can actually build agents to gather all of those metrics I talked about. That's what I'm doing, and you can do it too. It's pretty easy. And we just released a very cool product, which is Relevance Chat. Try Relevance Chat. It's a very cool thing to talk to AI and talk to your agents and trigger your agents. Definitely, metrics can be quite boring. So there is a way to automate a lot of them. Do this, because I still remember the hours that I spent in Jira just calculating our cycle time and lead time. So definitely find ways to do it easier and hopefully with a bit of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I'm a fan of trying to automate the work of leaders as much as we can in terms of those gathering and analytics side of things. That gives us more time to have those human conversations, to talk to people if we're not spending time in spreadsheets or Jira. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you again, Inga, for joining me. And we will see you next time on a Debugging Leadership live stream.
What a cool name. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.